Skateboarding video games. Quick, what just came to mind? If it's anything other than Tony Hawk Pro Skater, congrats, you're in a very small group. Odds are, if you are anywhere in your 20s or 30s, you likely played some sort of skateboarding video game either in the 90s or early 2000s, or perhaps even after that. While the genre is certainly past its heyday, it's also fair to say it never really totally died. While the Tony Hawk games largely ruled the 90s and early 2000s with an iron grip over the skateboarding genre, it did give way to another franchise during the era of PlayStation 3s, Xbox 360s, and Nintendo Wii's, which was the creatively named Skate. While it did have some noticeable differences with its predecessor, Skate largely followed in Tony Hawk's footsteps with a similar style and tone, but much better graphics on the newer hardware and a unique control scheme. Fresh off of Need for Speed Wanted and Carbon, EA's trusty developers and Black Box were a perfect fit for a nice flashy skateboarding game and, all things considered, did a pretty good job with the game and making a trilogy out of it. Even the third game, when most people find is the time most franchises start to feel stale, Skate was still pretty good. So what happened? Why is it that if I want to play a game in this franchise, I need to pull out a console that is over 10 years old? What the hell happened to Skate? There is no hiding the fact that the Tony Hawk's Pro Skater franchise was on a downward slope after the second game. They had largely done all there was to do in those games in the previous generation. And while the games released on the newer DVD-ROM systems certainly looked nice, they had little to do that hadn't already been done in the previous generation. This opened a lane for somebody to come along and do something different with it, and Skate was perfectly suited for that. For starters, on top of just looking outstandingly better than the Tony Hawk games thanks to the newer hardware, Skate had its own control style. Flicking the analog stick instead of pressing and holding face buttons was an interesting take, and just crazy enough to work. While it might have felt mushy and clunky at first to those used to the button-dominated style of Tony Hawk games, ultimately, once you gave it a chance, it was likely to grow on you as a rather intuitive alternative, and many ended up preferring it. The genius of it was creating a realistic 3D space where real-time physics of the board and the rider were the key to pulling off tricks, instead of triggering canned animations that you would have to time out while in the air. This approach, of course, took much more horsepower to pull off, but thanks to the hardware at the time, it was doable, and created a very authentic feel for the controls. Once this system was established, the usual sound effects and licensed music were crafted to bring it to life. On top of that, the game would take place in an open world, similar to Grand Theft Auto, where various challenges could be engaged online and offline, which really brought the concept into the 21st century in a big way. Needless to say, Skate was an unexpected hit for a genre that seemed to die with the last Tony Hawk game, but was actually just waiting for the next iteration of it to come along. Skate's sales exceeded expectations and reviewed extremely well for a skateboarding game in 2007. As one does after releasing a successful, innovative game, EA and Black Box cranked out a sequel in 2009 that would fine-tune the experience of the first while packing in more of what was great about the original. Skate 2 would also have more of an emphasis on its world and a little bit of a narrative about taking a city back from those who wanted to ban skateboarding. It was silly, but it fit the game perfectly. While some reviewers felt that it was perhaps a little too difficult for the casual audience, others said that that's what they liked about it, and that Skate 2 had a great risk and reward balance, as well as an authentic sense of progression as one gets better and better at various flip tricks, grinds, and so forth. Skate 2, to this day, is still widely regarded as the best in the series. EA Montreal would also put out a spin-off for the Wii and Nintendo DS slightly earlier than Skate 2. Both of these games would sell fairly well due to their novelty, but wouldn't review as well due to its dodgy motion controls and some underwhelming graphics for the time. Still, it was nice to have a Skate game on all major platforms of the time, and the series was well on its way to being a thing. While Tony Hawk games would put out several new games that tried their best to mix things up with physical peripherals and different experimental modes, most of their efforts would fall flat in the face of Skate 1 and 2. Skate 3, however, would seal the deal and solidify Black Box's franchise as the leader of the genre. It was late 2010, and the expectations for sports games, as well as open world games, were much higher than they were when Skate started back in 2007. Skate was determined to meet those expectations and was largely able to do so with more tricks, new modes, and a team building mechanic that, while it didn't amount to to much functionally, it did add to a sense of progression. Most fans of the series agreed that Skate 3 was the beefiest, best looking game in the series, but also admit that the focus and straightforwardness of Skate 2 was the ideal concoction of concepts from the series. With that being said, it is now fairly understandable that EA would consider putting the series on ice for a bit. It's always best to avoid taking a huge hit to a franchise before a massive disappointment comes. So if you can forecast a downward trajectory for a series without actually triggering it, that's always a good time to take a break. On top of that, Black Box wasn't the only entity making decisions here. EA is still the head honcho, and they likely decided that they would rather be using Black Box's talents in other areas, like Need for Speed games, which they promptly went back to focusing on before EA decided to finally close their doors in 2013. So Skate running its course in the eyes of EA and the developer being redirected to what they were doing before Skate began is largely what happened to the franchise. That being said, with the lane for a mainstream skateboarding game still existing with the lackluster performance of Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 5, who's to say what the future might hold for the genre? Surely, while the skateboarding genre might not be what it once was, there must still be fans out there ready to play something if it were to come along. Whether that something is going to be Skate 4 or not is anyone's guess at this point. That's it for this video. If you enjoyed and would like to see more, feel free to hit that subscribe button and hit the notification bell to ensure you'll be notified when new videos go up.